San Diego, UBC, and Brock University. So the fundings are from SHIRC, CRC Chair Program, CFI, and the National Science Foundation of China. So what I'm going to talk about, the first one is what is cheating, and then we look at the history of cheating, and then I spend a little bit of time talking about cheating in adults, mainly university students, and then cheating in early childhood. So what is cheating? Cheating is an intentional act that performed surreptitiously and illegitimately for the purpose of achieving a desirable goal. So that cheating covers a lot of our deceptive activities. So basically, there are some very critical elements of them. So one is intentional, the second is rule violation, the third one typically is covert and unbeknownst to the rule enforcer. And it's also motivated by the desire to gain adaptive advantages over others. So the focus of my work, because I'm at OISI, so I'm actually we have been mainly interested in academic cheating and how it starts. So what is academic cheating? So basically it's an intentional act performed the same way as other cheating behaviors, but for the purpose of achieving desirable academic performance. So that is the key difference between the other kinds of cheating behaviors and the academic cheating behavior. One of the interesting things about academic cheating is the reward is intangible in most situations, and sometimes far down the road in the future. So that makes it very interesting to look at. And then, so let's just take a very quick look at the history of cheating. So if you look at the Old Testament, it is replete with stories of cheating here and there. So two examples come to mind. One is Jacob, who actually cheated his brother's birthright through conspiration with a conspiracy with his mother. And then the other one is Adam and Eve, who actually cheated in front of God in a sense. But the interesting thing is, why do they cheat? So that's the main question, because the stake is very, very high. One is birthright, the other one is the fate of humanity, so to speak. So that's biblical reference. But what about real historical events? Well, when you look at the history of cheating, it comes to mind that the people who invented cheating in real social activities perhaps were invented by the Greeks. The reason for that, it was because they invented Olympics. When there was Olympics, there was competition because the stake was very high. Not only reputation, but the potential consequence of wealth that you accrue after you cheat. So cheating happened as soon as Olympics became a routine activity. So some of the cheating activities, for example, taking performance enhancement drugs actually started right there. And there are other things that people did, and also modern people did, such as put a curse on your opponent. So that's something the Greeks did as well. But what about cheating on exams or academic cheating? So the academic cheating came about because of academic exams. And the academic exams en masse was invented by the Chinese. About 600 AD, the emperor at that time in the Sui dynasty decided that he needed government officials, not just coming from the noble families, but from the regular people anywhere in the country. And how do you recruit these talented individuals? So one of the ways to do it is by giving exams, basically studying Chinese classics, and who can pass the government exams then will become automatically appointed as government officials from the county level all the way up to the central government. So that system changed China tremendously for the next several thousand years, actually. So the stake is very, very high. So if you pass an exam, and your personal reputation, of course, is tremendously enhanced. You become government official, your family becomes very wealthy, and then you actually can pass on all the benefits you gain from passing exam to many generations down the road. So I am a very good example of this. So my great-grandfather passed the provincial exam. So I don't have his photos. I took this from the internet. And so basically that would how he would look like. So he would be wearing similar kind of costume and have this pipe, which typically is opium pipe, in his hand, and receiving guests. And in his living room, there will be something like this. So this panel says, someone who passed the provincial exam. And he was a land-owning farmer in the countryside. So since he passed the exam, he was able to move, became very wealthy. He was able to move the city and bought the estate, and then took in multiple wives, and his family kind of flourished. So, and he built a very big estate. So I was born in that estate, but unfortunately the estate's now gone. They built condominiums on top of our estate. However, I found my great aunt's family. So her husband's father passed the national exam. So that is what it looks like. So this is now national treasure and tourist attraction. But our estate actually was bigger, 3 times bigger than their estate. So it's the magnitude of this is very, very big, and because of him passing this exam. And my relatives always say, Kang, you are the very inheritant of your great-grandfather's heritage, because I'm a professor at the University of Toronto. Anyhow, so as you can see, the stake is very, very high. So very quickly, a few hundreds afterwards, people start to cheat on these kind of exams. So these are a number of ways people have cheated on Chinese civil servant exams. By the way, civil servant exams are everywhere in the world, and they are all modeled after the original civil servant exam in China. And so the first way you cheat is by so-called sneaking in. Sneaking in, basically, because you're the exams about classics. And if you have difficulty to remember the classics, you just bring the classic into the exam room. So this is very similar to your students, what your students have done. So you put stuff inside your shoes. And so this is an interesting one. So this is a T-shirt with classics written all over it. So, and then this is a pair of socks, Chinese socks, and there's classics written over there. And then you see the lower part, this one. So this is a little book, and then with classics written on it, and you can put it into your pockets. The Chinese clothes, there's pocket right here on your sleeve. So that's how you do it. So this is the first way. Second way you can do it, if you have more money, you can hire someone to come in to take exam for you. So they're called substituting. The third one is bribing the examiner. So that if you have more money, you just bribe the examiner, so you get, advance notice about the questions, etc. And finally, if you have a lot of money, you can bribe the government, and you just don't have to do anything, and you get the title. Anyhow, so these are the methods of cheating. And then, so now let's look at the prevalence of cheating according to self-report among university students. So my students have done a meta-analysis, and then collecting all the papers published since the 1920s up to now, and then accumulate all the cheating rates according to self-reports by university students. And so this is, you can see about the distribution of the cheating rate. The highest cheating rate in the world among the Ukrainians and the Chinese. So I'm very proud that my people invented the exams. Of course, we should be the best in cheating. So our cheating rate is very high. So now let's look at the modern way of cheating. It's just the same as what happened many thousands of years ago. And the only difference is now you have phones, you have some, some kind of box in the ear, you can listen to people outside broadcasting the results to you. But other than that, the methods are the same. So that in terms of adult research, the most of the adult research would use self-reports. It's not a very good method, but just in general, so I'm not going to go through the details of this. So according to some of the meta-analysis, including ours, so there are some key predictors of self-reported academic cheating. Personality is one, and another one is one of the biggest one is neutralization. Basically, say, okay, the reason I'm doing cheating is because such and such. Therefore, I can do it without any moral, negative moral feelings. So, and in terms of personality, apparently, if you have psychopathy, you tend to cheat, and also if you have impulsivity problems, and you are more likely to cheat. So there are many factors people have studied with adults, but my focus is not really on adults. So anyhow, so how do you prevent cheating? And you are very familiar with this. So one is using sanction threat. We just tell our students, if you cheat, such negative consequence would happen. So that's one, but that sometimes is not enough. So then when we do exams, we have exams proctored by students or by ourselves. So it's called proctor exams, and which of course is inherited from the long tradition of the civil servant exams going back to China. And then in the 19th century, and in the United States, there was an invention of a new form of exam called unproctored exam, which actually was the first done in the early 1900s at Princeton University. It's part of the honor code. So now if you go to some of the liberal arts universities in the United States and some other even bigger universities, they actually have so-called honor codes. Part of the honor codes is that you don't have to do exams with supervision. So they are all unproctored exams. So that's the benefit of the honor code. And then, but nobody has done really empirical work to see whether or not the two which one is better to prevent students from cheating, because the idea of honor code is very interesting. That is, if you proctor your exam, you are sending a message to a student that I don't trust you. You're going to cheat. So I'm going to monitor you, make sure you don't cheat. But honor code and unproctored exam sends a message that I, as a professor, trust you. Because I trust you, and we hope students would trust us in reciprocate this trust by not cheating. But people have done self-report studies, and indeed, unproctored exams are significantly better than proctored exams. So students self-reported to have cheated much less. But nobody has done anything empirically to see actually whether or not students would cheat less during unproctored exam. So we did a study. And in this study, so this is Maccabee's work, self-reported work. As you can see, unproctored exam, the cheating rate is about 25%. And the proctored exam, the cheating rate is about 45%. So there's a big difference. But so we did a study a few years back. We assigned participants into different conditions. One of the conditions is supervised by a professor. The other condition is unproctored exam. And then yet another one, we not only give them unproctored exam, but at the beginning, we give them some reminder about the importance of being trusted not to cheat. But anyhow, so how do we measure students' cheating behavior? Well, so we got cooperation from Psych 100 professors, and then we inserted about 10 questions inside their exam. And in the exam, the question would be, let's say Daphne Maurer discovered the phenomenon of oesipia. I'm making up. And this occurred, yeah, you did, right? And it occurred among which group of participants? Then it's an open-ended question. But of course, there's no answer for it because we made up these 10 questions. But we post the answers to the class portal. We told them that we don't have time to take up on the exams, how to go through the exams and the answers to talk about them because we are running out of lecture time. So they have to check the online posting to see whether or not they got the exam correct or right, correct and wrong. But we post them just before the exam, but we told them they have to take away their phones, computers, etc. So they're not allowed to check on the internet about the answers to the questions. And then we leave the room so that they are doing the exam unproctored, or there's a professor supervising the whole exam. So this is what we found. So proctored exam, the cheating rate is 30%. So that's very typical. And what about the unproctored exam? The cheating rate is 90%, 89%. So then we give them some kind of say, if you, during the trust exam, if you cheat, if you are found out and you are, you will be disciplined according to the university policy. So what happened to that? The cheating rates are 90%. So basically, the unproctored exam method appeared not to work very well in this situation. So what are we going to do? So we've surveyed the literature. The cheating rate is really high, either by this kind of experimental methods or by self-report overall across the world. So how are we going to deal with this? So there are some innovative method people have used. So this is in Korea. So you can put a paper bag over your student's head so they can only look at their own exams. And then in India, it's even more drastic. So they actually strip the students naked when they are taking the exams. So of course, we are in Canada, we cannot do this. So what are we going to do? So as a developmental psychologist, I would say, well, let's see whether or not we can do something when they are young. Maybe if we do something, teach kids how to be honest, not to cheat, then they will generalize what they have learned at young age, and then transfer that to all the way to university and beyond. So that is our idea. So now going back to cheating in early childhood. So there are actually two theories about cheating, whether or not we are going to be honest in general. So one is called the dispositional theory. The Stanley Hall, who was actually one of the fathers of developmental psychology, believed that our honesty needs to be fostered from young age. And the reason we lie, cheat, steal is because we don't have a moral core. But if we train kids, bring up their moral core, they bring up the moral characters, then they are not going to cheat and lie. So that's one theory. And then Harshon and May, they are very famous actually in social psychology. They are one of the most creative researchers in the world at that time, social scientists at that time. So they did a larger scale study, 100,000 students in the United States, and they wanted to prove that Stanley Hall was correct. So they went about, did a lot of studies, and the methods they used were the ones I have stolen from them, and I'm going to show you how they did it. But in any case, what they found was kids steal, lie, and cheat, or inconsistently. Sometimes they cheat, sometimes they don't. It appears that kids' immoral behaviors are not driven by their lack of moral core, but rather by situations. In some situations, they just do immoral things, but in some other situations, they do moral things. So they came up with the idea of doctrine of specificity theory, meaning our moral behaviors are really driven by situations, not by what's inside, such as our moral understanding and characters. Anyhow, so this is about almost 100 years ago, and not many people actually have studied the early development of lying or cheating or stealing actually for a long time. And when I became a PhD student, I decided I was going to study lying. So because I read the book Sean May wrote, and then but at that time, so I noticed that there was only one chapter. So his whole book, their whole book has had about, I think, 14 chapters. One chapter is about lying, the rest about cheating. So I said, wow, maybe I should start with lying because they didn't do a good job of lying. So I spent my 25 years of my career on the development lying. But then I said, wow, I better go back to look at the work they did and see whether or not I can contribute a little bit more, because their work started with kids around grade 4. So it's about 9, 10 years of age. So we decided we're going to go younger, about 5 years of age, when they just entering the school system. So I don't want to bore you with our theories, but this is our working theory. So basically, we believe neither the dispositional theory is correct, nor the situational theory is correct with the evidence we saw at that time. However, we believe when we make distinctions about cheating, there could be two kind of decision processes. So one is called system 1, which is unconscious, emotional, and autonomic. So you sometimes make decision on the fly. And the other one is more deliberate. So it's called system 2, conscious thinking. And when you make a decision about to cheat or not, or to lie or not. And then the factors that contribute to our decisions would be some of the dispositional factors, and some of them are social cognitive abilities, and then motivations and the situational cues. Motivations, right, Suzanne? So I will talk to you more about the motivations. We haven't done very much so far. Anyhow, so, and the book so I read was called The Studies in Deceit. So it's a very famous book in psychology. And but only a few years, last year or the year before last year, I got invited to Columbia University to give a talk. I discovered that Sean May actually stole all the ideas from Paul Volcker, and that was his PhD students. So I look at all the methods they used. All of them were from his book, like no invention. So I was really tricked by the book by Sean May. So anyhow, so I want to acknowledge Paul Volcker's contribution. So he actually became instantly famous when he defended his thesis in 1923. Then he went to Iowa and then suddenly disappeared. So for no reason. So anyhow, so he's considered to be the father of modern social science and the unsung hero, actually. Anyhow, so just to acknowledge that. Now, so having stolen, I have stolen some of the ideas from both group of people, their books, and then we came up with the method to study how children cheat at a very young age. So this is one of the examples. I'm going to use this as an example to show you how, to tell you the results that we have found so far. So in this test, the child's task is to count the number of the items. For example, the rooster. So they have to circle the number after they count it. It's very easy for students. And then, as you can see, the task becomes increasingly more and more difficult. Once you get to the last one, it is very, very difficult. So we give kids 5 minutes to finish the test. And then we tell kids, we would like to see whether or not they can get all the questions correctly. And then we say, I'm sorry, I have to leave the room for some urgent matter, but here is the answer key. So I'm going to leave him somewhere in the room, but do not look at it. And then we take off. And of course, we don't trust them. So we have hidden cameras in the room to watch their every move. So that's how we do it. So I'm going to give you a number of, I'm going to talk about a number of studies, but please stop me if you have any questions or any comments. So this is a study done in Canada. So this is a longitudinal study we've been doing for the last 3 years. So we follow kids from 3 to 12 years of age, mainly in Canada, some of them in China. And And we are using, because of the pandemic, so we had to use Zoom for our experiment. So anyhow, so this is what we found. First, for academic cheating, that the cheating without any incentives, just for performance, there's decrease with increased age. So as you can see, 3 or 4-year-olds, they cheat a lot, but with increased age, the cheating rate goes down. But the cheating rate still is very high, like 50% around 9, 10 years of age. So that's number one. And number two is, there is a small gender effect. Boys are more likely to cheat than girls overall, regardless of age. And there's no correlation between ethnicity and the tendency to cheat. And we measured kids big 5, and personality measured according to children's own response failed to find any associations, which is very surprising because among adults, conscientiousness and openness have been associated with cheating, negatively with cheating among university students. So this is something we are still going to look for in the next few years. The third one is self-efficacy, the trait self-efficacy. So that is about your belief in your abilities to do something well in general. And that failed to predict children's cheating. And then parental religiousness also failed to predict cheating. And CBCL, which is a measurement of serious behavioral problems, also failed to predict children's cheating. However, when we use strength and weakness scale, which measures typically developing kids' emotional and behavioral problems, we actually found significant correlations, unique correlation between cheating and strengths and weaknesses, meaning that the more likely the child have emotional and behavioral problems, the more likely the child is going to cheat. And finally, we also found significant correlations between children's moral judgment of cheating and their actual behavior. So if they think cheating is wrong, they are less likely to cheat. So these are all good. So these are kind of correlational studies. And another thing we found was the so-called executive function. That is how you plan, inhibit behaviors, plan behaviors, switch from one action to another. And that is called executive function. And that is significantly correlated with whether or not the child will cheat. That is, if the higher your executive functioning abilities, the less likely you're going to cheat. So it all makes sense. But it's very interesting. It's totally in contrast to what I've found for the last 25 years about lying. In lying, it's the opposite. So the higher executive function, the more likely you're going to lie, and you're going to lie better. But in cheating, it's the opposite. So this is very interesting. And the next one is theory of mind. That is your ability to understand different people have different beliefs about the world, different knowledge about the world. And in this case, we also find positive correlation, negative correlations. That is, the more you have the ability to understand other people's mind, the less likely you're going to cheat, which is also opposite to lying. So in lying, the higher your theory mind, your ability to understand other people's mind, the more likely you're going to lie, and you're going to lie better. So lying and cheating are two different kind of so-called immoral behaviors. So that's what I want to emphasize. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about any questions so far.
Sorry, I just wondered if you were sufficiently powered to look at whether or not there are any cultural differences in the way that children approach this.
Yeah, excellent question. So we have collected data in China and in Canada. And within Canada, we also have people from different ethnicities. But in Canada so far, we don't see any difference. However, I anticipate differences between the two countries. The reason for that is because in China, academic achievement is extremely emphasized from very, very young age. So you have to perform well. That is drilled into your mind when you are a baby. And so I suppose kids would start to cheat at an earlier age than Canadian kids. So that's my hypothesis. But I don't know any results yet because my students have been doing that. We almost finished data collection, so we are not allowed to look into the data. So we are just waiting until she finishes. We did the online and offline studies. So we will know in about a few months. So yeah, I will answer the question by that time. Yeah. John.
With regards to age, it's about learning not to cheat. But if there's social structures that push children to learn to succeed, then it should be the reverse correlation. They should learn how to cheat better.
Yes, yes, indeed. So right now, so we are looking at the age. So my belief, this age effect will change with time. That is, so the more you get into the school system, and the more likely the age effect will reverse. So that's kind of my working hypothesis. But at this point, I think it's not, the reason kids show this age-related effect is about inhibitory control. I think that is the main factor. That is, when you are told not to do something, but the situation is so tempting, and the younger kids just sometimes cannot resist the temptation to do it, but the older kids don't. So I think that could be one of the reasons. That's why we've seen, like, strength and difficulty questionnaire uniquely predicting, and then we have executive functioning unique predicting. I think so. That is the early age effect. We need to really go into and look at what exactly is this age effect. Anyhow, so that's excellent question.
12 questions for the question period. They're not hearing them on Zoom at all. Okay, so keep going. I know we said 6 experiments.
Okay, all right. Okay, so now I'm going to, yeah, so I'm now going to look at the do things experimentally. So the idea is, what are the cues? John actually mentioned, there are some social structures in our environment kind of push you to do either to cheat or not to cheat. So let's start at the rule of social cues on cheating. So one of the studies we did was to look at the praising. So kids get praised a lot. And in North America, kids get praised a lot. And the question is, so what does praising do to a child cheating? So this is what we did. Okay, so, oops, oh, wrong, sorry. So these are Chinese preschoolers, and they were assigned to 3 conditions. One is a baseline condition using the same paradigm I mentioned, but we didn't say anything when we leave the room. Just do not peek at the answer, and we leave the room. So that's baseline condition. And then the ability praise condition is when before we give the test to the kids, we give them a exercise. And when they finish the exercise, we said, wow, you're so smart. And that's it. And just one statement. And we then give them the real test. Then we leave the room with the answer on the table. And then in the performance praise condition, we give them an exercise, and they passed the exercise. We just said, you did very well, and that's it. So very subtle and simple social cues. So this is what we found. So the 3-year-olds, in the baseline condition, about 40% of them cheated. So remember, in this situation, there's no incentive for them to cheat. There's no incentive if they got all the questions right. So this is 40%, about 40% of them cheated in the baseline condition. And if we praise them for performance, that is, they did well on the exercise, and there's no difference between the baseline condition and the performance condition. However, if we say, wow, you're so smart, what happened? The cheating rate increased significantly. So this is very interesting. So this basically, if you praise kids for something that is internal and difficult to control, somehow they would cheat to get the question right. But the question is, why would they do that? So we did a second study. So we hypothesized maybe the reason the kids in the smart condition cheated was because they think, you said I'm smart. Now I cannot finish the exam. I cannot get all the questions correctly. So I better cheat so that I will maintain my reputation in front of you as someone who is smart. So in this study, we use the same paradigm, but so we have 4 conditions. But let's start with the first 3 conditions. So one is a smart repetition condition. So we basically instead of give them a exercise, we just say, oh, I heard from your teacher, you're a smart kid. So that's smart repetition condition. And the other condition is called the cleanliness repetition. So we just said, I heard from your teacher, you're a very clean kid. Okay, sounds very strange. In China, this is like, if a child is evaluated every year by teachers in terms of their cleanliness. So when I was a kid, I actually have a handkerchief stapled on my shirt because I have runny nose. I have to clean it. So if I constantly clean my runny nose, the teacher will say Kang is a clean kid. So and that's a different kind of repetition, but not smart, but a good repetition. And then there's a no repetition condition. So and then I will talk about smart repetition control later. So anyhow, so this is what we found. So 3 and 5 year olds. So when they are, there's no repetition in the control condition, we didn't mention any repetition. So this is the cheating rate. And then when we said that the kids are clean, has a repetition to be clean, and there's no difference between the two conditions. But once we mentioned the child is smart, has a smart repetition, and the cheating rate increased significantly. So we believe the previous finding that when we praise kids for being smart is creating a repetition threat. So when they encounter difficulty, failures, they want to maintain their repetition. Therefore, they want to do something. And then by cheating, they think they could maintain their repetition being smart. But the question is this repetition unique to the experimenter, or is it generalizable to other people? So then we did a follow-up experiment. In this experiment, the first experiment comes in, says, definitely, I heard you're a very smart kid. And then I said, oh, I remember that I have something to do. So I'm not going to give you a test. Someone else is going to give you a test. So another experimenter comes in and gave Daphne a test. So now, I know Daphne's repetition, but that person does say anything about Daphne's repetitions. The question is, would the child, having heard the child has a smart repetition, would the child continue to cheat in front of another person who never mentioned their smartness repetition? It turned out it doesn't. So it's very specific. So the child wants to maintain the repetition in front of you because you told me I'm smart, but not someone else. So that also tells you, so the child is very smart in terms of how to manage their repetitions in front of others, and cheating apparently is one of the methods they would use to maintain their repetition in front of a specific person. Okay, so next. Any questions so far? Pardon? Okay, hold the questions. Okay, so now, so the next thing is interesting. I probably have some asides to talk about as well.
That's an interesting presentation.
I'm sure, but you know, I haven't missed it. I'm to get got through today, so go ahead and give me a quick summary. Today. No time.
Okay. So in this study, we use a slightly different paradigm, but that's not important. But the key question is, if we ask kids to promise, what would they do? So I've done, with my other colleagues for over 20 some years to looking at whether or not you ask kids to make promise will make them more likely to be honest. That is not to lie. And it's very interesting. That is, so if you ask a child, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to promise me you're going to tell me the truth. And kids are more likely to tell the truth. And even though they have no idea what a promise is. So I'm talking about 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. So a lot of them have no idea what a promise is. As soon as you mention this, and kids would do what they promised to do, which is, so far I have no idea why. But anyhow, we thought maybe we can ask kids not to cheat. Would they actually not to cheat? So this is what we found. So in the no promise condition, majority of kids cheated, but in this study, there was a physical incentive. So that's why the cheating rate is much higher. However, when we ask them to promise not to cheat, at least from 5 years onward, there's significant reduction of cheating. So just simply to make a promise not to cheat, kids are less likely to cheat. And then, so very interestingly, so let me show you the next one. These are Canadian kids. So this is a universal phenomenon. We have no idea why, like it promise has such a hold on our kids, but there's no theory or in-depth analysis about why, by the way. But anyhow, so we did another study in Canada. So in this study, we had 3 conditions. So one is control condition, and then one is acquiescence condition, that is say, okay. So basically the child has say, I promise versus okay. So a lot of kids actually say okay spontaneously, but we make them say, I promise I'm not going to cheat. So let's see what happens. So the control, 80%, same paradigm with the physical incentives plus performing well. So okay, the cheating rate doesn't change. So only when they say, I promise I'm not going to cheat, the cheating rate goes down. So to a child, the promise is a very, very strong incentive somehow for them to do something moral, at least, not lying and not cheating. But the key is it's not, the kids are very, very sneaky. That is a lot of, when we do studies spontaneously, we say, would you promise not to cheat? The kids say, okay, yeah, like this. And if they do that, they will lie, they will cheat. Only once they, I promise I'm not going to. So when we found out that, so we then institute this procedure in this particular study. Anyhow, so that's the social cues. So now I'm going to talk about physical cues. So the idea of physical cues is, if you look at the exams you have proctored or administered to your students, and we sometimes create situations so make students less likely to cheat by making them sit apart, and something as simple as that. But sometimes we didn't care very much, then we just let them sit where they want to sit. And the question is, this kind of physical environment wouldn't make any difference. So the whole idea actually came from the nudge theory. I don't know if you're familiar with this behavioral economics theory called nudge theory. Nudge theory is, if we create an environment with cues, very subtle, and that subtle cue can push you in one direction, but not the other. So for example, if I want to eat less, I would give you a small plate with food. So that would be one kind of situation. So creating an illusion, you have a full bowl of, let's say, meat or whatever, but the plate actually is very small. Another example would be, in order for you not to eat candies, I put the candies inside the drawer instead of laying them on the table. So something as simple as that. And behavioral economists have studied these kind of nudges for the last 20-some years, and they have found a lot of very useful ways to get people to do things they think are good for you. For example, the whether or not to sign up for the university pension funds, like insurances, and instead of opt in, you have to opt out. And by just making this small change, the enrollment rate increased dramatically, something like that. Anyhow, so we kind of took these ideas and put them in our study. So in this study, we start with 2 conditions. This paradigm, the same paradigm as before, that is no physical incentive, material reward, but just ask kids to do well on the same test, the counting test. But as you can see, in the transparent sheet baseline condition, we actually put the answer right next to the child inside the folder, which is transparent plus a sheet. So kids, if the kid want to cheat, they can just look over and copy the answer. So that's the transparent sheet baseline condition. The opaque condition actually involves, we put a piece of paper on top of that answer sheet. Just by creating this barrier, the questions, would kids cheat less when there's slight barrier? But cheating can be done very easily. They just lift up the piece of paper, they just can't do it. So let's see what they do. So there's a significant difference between the 2 conditions. In the transparent condition, cheating rate is close to 80%, which is enormous because there's no physical incentive. So typically our cheating rate is about 50%. So this, with something so accessible, kids are more likely to be tempted to cheat. But by putting a piece of paper over it, you reduce their cheating rate to the baseline level. That's about 50%. But that's, given. So what about we put something, a 3D object on top of that? And you can see the cheating rate now reduced significantly. So then we say, okay, is this because we have a physical object that block you? So you have to pick it up and put it back in the original state. So it's something kids may not find, good, easy to do. Therefore, they refrain from cheating. So what we did was something a psychologist would do, is take a photo of this box and put on top of this the answer sheet, and then the answer is, and then the cheating rate also significantly reduced. So it doesn't have to be the real object. You just take a symbol of the real object somehow blocks the child from cheating. This is actually very consistent with the studies that have been done with adults in nudge studies. Okay, so anyhow, so some kind of psychological object can prevent child from cheating. So imagine you can institute this kind of methods in your exams. Okay, so next one is something we want to look at is what about the distance of the answer key to you? Would that make it harder or easier for you to cheat? So in this study, we have children in the same kind of paradigm, but we have the answer key is on another table, one table length width from the child, that's 0.6 meter. Then we have 1 meter, 2 meter, 3 meter. As you can see, from if the object, the answer key is 0.6 meters from the child, the cheating rate is 50%. But as soon as you push it away to 1 meter, the cheating rate goes down to about 30%. And there's no change afterwards. So the question is why? So one possibility is distance. Somehow this 1 meter distance creates this magic that prevents the child from cheating, or simply because the child can see the answer while sitting down when the table is 0.6 meters away. But when the table is 1 meter away, it is no longer visible when you're sitting down. So the child has to get up and look. And by doing that, maybe that would give make the child more likely to be caught. So maybe that is the real reason. It's not proximity, but the visibility. So we did a follow-up study. So in this case, we enlarge the answer sheet, but they put the table at 1 meter or 0.6 meters. That is, so now, so at the 1 meter, if you sit down, you can still see the answer. So then we find the cheating rate goes back up to about 50%. Okay, so this is now, so because you can see, but by the same logic, if you shrink the answer sheet, make it difficult to see, and the cheating rate should go down. And indeed, the cheating rate significantly goes down, even for the 0.6 meters condition. So basically, kids are like rats and mice. We can really manipulate their behavior by make them cheat or not cheat by just simply changing the environment slightly, and they would do what you would expect. Anyhow, but as you might have noticed, there's a confound in our design, because in all the experiments, the visibility and distance is confounded. They are kind of coupled together. So we kind of, became crazy. So we got to kind of figure out whether or not it is indeed the visibility, not the distance, that matters in children's decision to cheat. So we did this study. So in this study, we enlarged the answer sheet, I don't know, like 800 times or something. So made a big poster, almost the size of this screen. And then we laid them on the ground, which is 2 meters away. But interestingly, because of the angle of visual angle, so if we sit down, if I put the answer sheet on the table, you cannot see the answer. But if we put it down on the floor, now you can see the answer. As you can see, the kids, when you put the answer on the floor, the cheating rate goes back up to 50%. But if it's on the table, the cheating rate is very low. So this is a clear evidence that whether or not the child can see the answer while sitting down is the main determinant of children's decision to cheat or not cheat. Okay, so, and then I'm going to talk about my last study. So so every day I go to take subway to come to work, and I noticed, like I don't know, you noticed. So when I get off the subway, there will be in the old days, actually now they changed that. So there's a path. You buy the fee collector. So there's no barrier. But if you walk towards any barrier, the barrier automatically opens up. There's no difficulty for you to go through. But every single time, I always go through the one without barrier, even knowing cognitively there's no difference between the condition. I said, this is interesting. I should do something about this. Anyhow, so we did this study with the kids. So in this study, we have kids doing exactly the same paradigm, but we have them sit in the room with 2 tables as the previous study. But so in one condition called the no barrier condition, as you can see, there's nothing between the answer sheet and the child. So the child can copy by looking at the answer from the other table. And the same distance, okay, so the same 0.6 meter distance, now we put a barrier between the two. The barrier is a frame with transparent plastic. So as you can see from the image, it looks like opaque, but it's not. It's totally transparent. We actually made this to make the paper convey the idea there is a plastic sheet between the 2 tables. And you can actually sit down and look through the plastic sheet to look at the answer and copy the answer. And then the third condition is there's nothing in between, but there's a frame. The question is, would kids more likely to cheat in the baseline condition than the other conditions with some kind of a barrier? So this is no frame condition. As before, about 50% would cheat. And with the film, its cheating rate is about 15%. And the film, and the frame without film, the cheating rate is also lower, less than 30%. So somehow creating this barrier was sufficient to make kids less likely to cheat, even though it does not actually block your visual access to the answer. Okay, so now, the reviewers came back, said, well, maybe having a frame in the room is a strange situation. So the kids said, this is strange, I better not to cheat. So to address her comment, so we put the frame on the other side, and we want to see what happened. If you put the frame on the other side, cheating rate goes up, back up to the original level, 50%. So then we say, okay, maybe we should do a few more studies. So, and then we say, okay, how about we put the frame, instead of blocking in between the 2 tables, we now set the frame that is somehow blocking the child, only psychologically. So one is on the child side, one is on the other side. So the idea is, on the child side, the child may say, well, this frame may extend all the way to my table, therefore I should not cheat. But if the frame is on the other side, the child will cheat. And the results confirmed our hypothesis, yes. So if you rotate the frame, but make the frame on the child side, the child is less likely to cheat. But if you put the frame on the other side, not blocking they are psychologically blocking their access to the answer sheet, the cheating rate goes up back to 50%. And then we go crazy. So we say, okay, let's do one more thing. So the last experimental study, we said, so the experimenter comes in, before she leaves the room, she has this magic wand. She said, I'm going to draw a berry here, and then she takes off. That's it. So no other comment. Just she said, I'm going to draw something. But of course, the answer sheet is on the other side. So what happens in this condition? So this is now totally imagined barrier. And the cheating rate goes back down. So somehow creating an imaginary barrier blocks the child's, somehow put the child, to create a situation for a child to refrain from cheating. So then, so this is a really weird study and the weird findings. But however, when we looked around, we discovered it's not weird at all. It's a very common human phenomenon. So let me show you this. So if you go out, now watch the zebra, and most of the people would be walking within the zebra, not outside it. Even though there's no physical barrier says you should not, somehow we do this, because that's not important. Maybe we have learned, over time how to walk across the street. But what about this? So this is a really neat one. So if you have cats, your cats like to sit in boxes. It turned out that there's no need for a box actually. So you just tape on your floor a square, they just go in and sit on that. Okay, so this is there's many, many photos of this on the internet. So, and then a psychologist, of course, came up with a good idea to test whether or not the animals have visual illusions. So this is how they did it. So this is the optical illusion. Okay, so same kind of images, just one creates a box, the other doesn't. And the cats would more likely to go to the place where there's a optical illusion of boxes. So this is something apparently even among the animals, some kind of barrier creates something for them to do one way or the other. And then I was a few years ago, January the 6th or something like this. So that's the Trump thing, right? So I watched the news on, I think this is CNBC. Anyhow, so this is what I saw, right? It is chaos. It was chaos outside at the Capitol, right? So then something strange happened. So these people then broke through and went in, and watch what they did. And then they actually follow the barriers. So these are the rioters. Okay, the rioters came in and they were rioting outside. They came in, and very few people actually get out of the band. They follow the barriers and go into the Capitol. So now they're inside Capitol. Then someone bad came in and they took away the barrier, and this is what happened. And now it's chaos. So you can see, so there's these little environmental designs you can make, and sometimes people can do things orderly as you want, or disorderly as you don't want. And same thing is true for academic cheating. Anyhow, so in summary, so number one, cheating has a long history. And number two is the adults frequently cheat on exams, and unproctored exam may be a bad idea. And then cheating begins in preschool years. Age, gender, executive functioning, and theory of mind play a significant role. And social cues such as praise and promise can cause children to cheat more or less. And the physical cues about accessibility, such as visibility or moral barrier, can nudge young children to cheat more or less. So, and then I want to know, like, what should I do next? So I asked the mighty ChatGPT. And ChatGPT gave me, I say, tell me the top 5 unanswered questions. And the ChatGPT was quite correct. So these are the top 5 studies I have to do. One of them you already mentioned. Last one, cross-cultural and cross-national differences in cheating among children. See, ChatGPT is very smart. And I'm actually proposing right now to do a longitudinal study to get grant from SSHRC to answer the question number 1 and question number 2. At this moment. So anyhow, so ChatGPT is a very good place actually get some ideas. And then going back to our theory. So right now, we are kind of going through various components of our working model, and we haven't really done any system one type of system one and system two decision making about cheating, but we have found something that seemed to be contributing to children's decision to cheat, such as executive functioning and theory of mind. And there's possibility of risk-taking tendencies and temperament. And also we have learned learning versus performance orientations may play a role, but we are still exploring at this point. And then lastly, situational factors such as what, where, and when, and whom are in the environment would make child more and less likely to cheat. In any case, so now coming to my great-grandfather. So I think about 20 years ago now, 15 years ago. So my father decided to sell our house. So we went to the attic, and then I actually found this panel in the attic. And in the meantime, so there's, oh, wow, you know, my great-grandfather indeed passed this provincial exam. Then I found something like this. It's not the same thing, but I bought it from the internet. Something looks like this. So basically, you notice that's the sneak in book of Chinese classics. So you could hide inside your sleeves. And I said, Dad, I said, did our great-grandfather actually cheat to pass the exam? Oh, my father said, no, he didn't. He actually bought the title from the government. Anyhow, thank you very much.